All right, folks, let's get into just what's going on in terms of these the talks ostensibly to keep the government funded. You'll recall, I guess it was in December, that the continuing resolution passed just barely. Passed in the House without any need for Democratic votes. That could happen again. So it's really just about the Senate. Will Democrats try and hold up the continuing resolution in the Senate? And what it's starting to come down to is Democrats want to include a dreamer's fix into this continuing resolution. They're not going to get a full-on budget. Funding of the government. They're going to have to just maintain at the same levels that it's been and punt, I don't know, a month and down the road. Democrats want to get a DACA fix. However, you've got, well, here's Tom Cotton's perspective on it. And this tweet right here. So Tom Cotton, Republican senator from Arkansas, says Democrats are now threatening to shut down the government if they don't get amnesty for millions of illegal immigrants. This is his fun way of talking about dreamers. You know, kids who were brought here when they were too young to make a decision about it have lived the vast, overwhelming majority of their lives here. They've graduated high school. They've gotten a degree. They've gotten a diploma. They've gotten a job or they served in the military. That's who he's talking about. And he says, let's see how that works out for them, especially in places like West Virginia, Indiana, Missouri, North Dakota, Montana. He's specifically talking about Manchin, Donnelly, McCaskill, Heitkamp, and Tester in the midterm elections in the Senate. Now, Tom Cotton, as you know, has been a longtime Democratic strategist who is very vested in the Democrats winning in those states. That, of course, is me being facetious. But that's what they're hoping. The Republicans are hoping to intimidate those 6, I guess, senators. And they are hoping that they can get a continuing resolution. They may sweeten it by actually funding, long-term funding for children's health insurance program on the federal level, and that they can push the DACA question into the next continuing resolution as we get closer to the deadline that's going to start to, we're going to see start the deportations of some of these DACA folks. And that's the hope. And I just want to read a little bit from this. I guess this is the Times report on this. Everybody's got a similar a rundown post, the Times. In the Times, they're talking about Kamala Harris and Cory Booker and Kristen Gillibrand in New York, who are all Democrats, as you know, contemplating presidential runs. They are pressing Democrats to oppose any government funding bill, no matter how short term, that does not protect the 800,000 DACA folks. Cotton, as we've just mentioned, is saying that senators in these states are going to suffer if there's a government shutdown. Now, personally, I think that's BS. I think we are 11 months out from an election, and all these senators, I think, can more or less be close to released. And you could still have the Democrats prevent, or I should say, cause a government shutdown. They can pretend that they weren't on board with it. And we all know the Republicans control every seat of government. And they go, I mean, my God, to find myself, I think, I mean, if I'm reading this correctly, agreeing with Steve Israel. You remember that dude?
I do. He's from Long Island, right?
No, I think it's, was he from Long Island? I'm not sure.
Pretty sure he was a congressman from Long Island.
Yeah, he was definitely from New York State. I wasn't sure.
Very not an inspiring leader.
No. I wouldn't say full-on blue dog, but sort of very blue dog friendly.
Bluish. And then would make some random feints to the left. Like he actually supported Occupy for a minute,
right,
which is very odd.
Right. But he said, and he, he's just a now strategist, the Democrats should seize their leverage now that Republicans already have enough political headaches, namely the president's historic unpopularity. I mean, if there's ever a time to do this, it would be now. Right? I mean, if there's ever been a government shutdown, period, it would be to do it now. They absolutely have the upper hand as a matter of policy and a matter of politics. Republicans cannot afford to shut down the government in one of the roughest midterm environments they've ever had. Democrats have the upper hand. They should play the upper hand. Of course. And then here's the counter argument. Forcing a government shutdown in the same fashion that congressional Republicans did in President Barack Obama's second term would be to take a considerable political risk. The legislative equivalent of the nuclear option. It looks like a big Washington mess to people, says David Axelrod. Right?
Come on, man.
The question is, have you reached the point now where you want to employ what is your most explosive tool in your toolbox? I mean, look, first off, this is not a government shutdown in the same fashion that congressional Republicans did in President Obama's second term. Because in Obama's second term, the Democrats did not control both houses of government. Barack Obama was significantly more popular than Donald Trump.
Maybe he should hash it out with like the founder of UKIP or something on his next podcast.
This is super important, I think. Look, my guess would be that Chuck Schumer is not going to be bold about this. He's going to say, look, we got to play game. We got to play with them. But this is, if the Democrats can actually maintain here, and they will break the Republicans. They will break them. They are operating the Republicans from a position of weakness. And if they're able to muster the courage here to break the Republicans, because they will have to break very quickly. You know, when Republicans shut down the government and nothing happens, nothing catastrophic, right? It's just sort of the quiet suffering that takes place. They walk around saying, this is why we've proved that government is not necessary. For Republicans to argue that this is hurting people would be for them to have to argue that government is helpful to people. This runs contrary to their entire messaging. This is the time for Democrats to shut it down. And then to blame Trump and blame the Republicans and say, protect the children. They must do this now. And the benefits from this are going to be huge.
You're making a very compelling case. And I think we will do it. And as soon as Fox reports that the DACA recipient, who we'll find out a couple weeks later isn't even a DACA recipient, committed a mugging somewhere in San Antonio, we're going to fold immediately, just so you know.
Okay. I appreciate that.
Maybe one Hannity segment, but if that repeats through the morning block on Fox and Friends, we'll fold completely. And in fact, we'll propose our own border wall, just so you're ready. We're calling it a compassion wall of common sense because people want common sense, but also compassion.
We're going to put it, it's going to make it see-through. That way, if someone throws some non-compassion over it, you won't get hit in the head.
I think the president wants to negotiate. I said, hey, I don't think Haiti's a shithole. I think it's a garbage dump. And he said, we can talk about it together. I said, Mr. President, my grandmother and my mother didn't like the Schwarzes very much. But you don't say it out loud. And he said, wow, Chuck, I can learn from you about how to talk about Schwarzes in public. I said, there you know what? Go.
Don't you think these guys have already had that conversation, though? Like three times?
Oh, totally.
3 or 4 times?
You don't talk. We've already had a Schwarzer president.
3 or 4 times. They've
Between
already had this
you and I
conversation.
both know that he hated Israel. But we still support him.
Hi, folks. Sam Seder here. We still need your help on our Patreon page. YouTube ads have come back, but not nearly as much as we had before. So if you can help us out, any little bit helps. Head over to our Patreon page right at this URL, and you'll help us keep helping you by making videos